Democrats of America National Town Hall for August 31st, 2025. It's Labor Day weekend. And in the second hour of our town hall, we're going to have a discussion about the state of the labor movement, the manner in which the Trump administration is attacking organized labor, and just how important and central the alliance between free agent progressive organizations like PDA and the labor movement are right now in terms of forming an anti-coalition, anti-fascist coalition, united front against MAGA, against authoritarianism in the United States, and also just how very important all of us really need to rally behind organized labor, because one of the things with so much going on, so much chaos being created by the Trump administration that is not really being front and centered enough is just how destructive the attacks on organized labor are from the Trump administration. So we'll be discussing that in the second hour. But it's also a bit of a hopeful segment, too, because look, if we're going to win this thing and we're going to build back a better society in the wake of this crisis and catastrophe that we're in, that bond between progressives and organized labor, I think, is really going to be at the heart of what's achieved. So it should be a great conversation. And of course, it will relate to the national demonstrations that will be taking place across the country tomorrow against the Trump administration's attacks on labor and also celebrating organized labor on Labor Day. But before that, in the first hour, and the theme of the first hour will be, well, somewhat twofold, but it'll revolve around the resolution that was introduced relating to Israel and Gaza at the DNC meeting, Resolution 18 that PDA supported, introduced by fantastic 26-year-old member of the DNC, an organizer and activist from Florida, Allison Minnerly, who all of a sudden found herself in the middle of a national event that was unfolding at the DNC. And I just, obviously PDA was involved in helping support Resolution 18. We mobilized our phone tree. We called all the members on the resolution committee, wrote them emails and asked them to vote a specific way. And that got me in touch, or at least in threads, with Allison. I was so impressed with everything I heard from her and saw her doing in terms of how much it just fits with the general, PDA strategy, which of course, people always push on us about what we're doing. Why are you always committed to staying inside the Democratic Party? What can you achieve by fighting inside the Democratic Party? And here was this just exemplary instance of somebody, I think, really achieving an incredible amount, and in a way that can impact, obviously one of the highest profile international conflicts in the world right now, by getting involved in organizing and their activism inside the Democratic Party. So Allison will be our featured guest in the first hour, and I'll be introducing her in about 10 minutes. And as I said, that sort of two subjects there are, of course, the DNC, progressive organizing in the DNC, that question combined with issues around appropriate policy response to the horrors that are ongoing in Gaza. And in particular, how we organize around that issue in light of course, the Trump administration and the domination of foreign policy, as always, by the executive branch of the government. So that's coming up soon. A little bit related to that, my thoughts for this week, my little mini editorial comments at the top of the town hall. I was very impressed by an event I went to yesterday, commemorating the 55th anniversary of a very, very historic event in Southern California, which is called the Chicano Moratorium. And, to go to that this year in Southern California was just something that resonated, obviously, in a number of ways. And even to some degree, to me, related to what's transpiring in Palestine, because, of course, spearheaded by Stephen Miller in the Trump administration, for people who don't know, is a graduate of Santa Monica High School out in the progressive west side of Los Angeles, a prosperous Jewish American family. And by the time he was, I think, a ninth grader, eighth grader, he was known among his peers in that public school system as a basically racist white nationalist who, in particular, had a venomous hatred of Latinos and the large presence of the Chicano and Latino population here in Southern California. And So, of course, the great historic event 55 years ago was the Chicano moratorium, in which the sort of like Chicano liberation movement was really building up. There was a sort of de facto alliance at that time in 1970 with the Black Panther Party. Of course, they came from Northern California. Huge population of Chicano Latinos already in Southern California at that time. And so they staged an event, the Chicano moratorium, right in the neighborhood I was yesterday. And actually, the LAPD had a police riot, attacked the crowd viciously. 4 people were killed, including a legendary LA Times reporter, Ruben Salazar. And of course, yesterday's event took place in Salazar Park. And it just reminded me, with what's going on now, and with Miller's authorship of the ICE raids and the clear just racism, naked racism that informs his approach to what he's pursuing as a public figure, the dehumanization of people, the long history of American dehumanization of people of color, and then of course we see the dehumanization of people in Palestine. And just it's unbelievable to be here, of course, and to live inside a metropolitan area. We have, in many respects, in Los Angeles, risen up and done so, in a constructive way, that we've pushed out the Marines. The National Guard is not openly active on the streets of Los Angeles currently. The Attorney General of California and the governor, and to a degree, the mayor and other Southern California leadership has managed to push them out of Southern California. But the ICE raids are continuing, and they are continuing at breakneck speed, popping up all over Southern California. And again, the rights that we had, through centuries of struggle, had secured for any person in the United States, their right to be habeas corpus rights, their rights to a fair trial, for the rights to understand who and why they're being arrested, have all been thrown out the window here. And it's just hard not to sense that what we're seeing in Palestine, what we're seeing here in Southern California, tragically still have a real there's a clear sense of connection in terms of the ideology of white nationalism. And we all need to just stand up in solidarity with all people around the world. And I think the vast majority of Southern Californians and the vast majority of Americans even would support our position. And we just have to be forthright and brave in standing with the people who were celebrating the Chicano moratorium yesterday. It was an incredible event that happened. Okay, with that, let me introduce Mike Fox. He's going to tell us about our PDA to-dos for the week. Then we're going to hear from Donna Smith, the chair of the PDA Advisory Board, with her thoughts for the week. And then I'll be introducing Allison Minnerly from the DNC. Take it away, Mike Fox.
And can you hear me, Alan?
Yes, indeed.
Excellent. The machine is working. That's always a beautiful thing. All right, gang, I'll be brief because we got a jam-packed event here today. So, to-do number one, as always, revel in the fact that you're surrounded by people who get it here. Each and every week, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific, we are here building community, showing solidarity with each other in very challenging times. So, number one, feel the fact that you're surrounded by friends here, okay? It can be a wonderfully healing kind of energy, all right? And I just want to thank everybody. You make me healthier just by being here on Sunday, so I thank you. To-do number two, take notes, because we're identifying very specific things that we need to get done over the upcoming week, okay? So let's make sure that we got that in our pocket as we leave today. So from a time and treasure standpoint, the immediate to-do is the big Labor Day events tomorrow. Go to maydaystrong.org. Find one near you, show up, and get some pictures. Send them to us at info@pdamerica.org, and we'll get them going viral, okay? So, but big day of solidarity tomorrow. This is not only a response to the craziness that's going on, but arguably even more our response to showing solidarity with working people. Okay, positive energy, positive energy. Now, to-do number two, phone bank, phone bank, phone bank, phone bank. We are on a roll, gang. There is no question that a lot of the legislative and administrative things we're seeing right now are troubling. Yep, they are. However, Keep in mind that electorally, since November, we're on a roll. You're seeing districts flipping huge numbers. Most recently, a Senate seat in Iowa, a state Senate seat that flipped 22 points. And we took back a Republican held district there. All right. There definitely is light at the end of the tunnel, and we are on a roll. So pile on. We got special elections on the 9th. The one that's immediately identifiable is the one that is in Virginia's 11th district. We got to hold that seat. And so pile on with the phone team. I'm tossing the link in the chat, but if you don't see it, it's pdamerica.org/volunteer. Give us an hour and make a real difference, okay? And then there's a big old long list of other to-dos that I don't have time to go over. I'll be tossing a link into the chat that will send you to the PDA to-do list weekly, okay? So hit that sucker, pick 3 or 4 things and go, all right? And then finally, from a treasure standpoint, we're looking for solidarity on the call today. Big numbers are always a wonderful thing, but most importantly is that we come together as a team in solidarity here. And even if you just toss $1 in, that's beautiful. Well, the goal is for us all to get in the game, either time, treasure, or both, okay? So I'll be tossing those chat. And if you don't see the link to make a donation, go to pdamerica.org, click on donate, and boom, you're cooking with gas, okay? We'll be back at the top of the hour to see where we're at on our goals. Otherwise, back to you, Alan.
Thank you so much. And I was always very happy to introduce Donna Smith, who is my predecessor in my position and the chair of the advisory board of PDA. Welcome, Donna.
Thanks so much, Alan. And first of all, let me tell everybody I'm sorry I've been absent for a few weeks and maybe a little bit in and out in the weeks that come ahead. My husband had some serious health complications after a hip surgery. And as often happens in this country, family becomes caregivers at times when you're not sure you know exactly how to do that or if you can do that. So I'm sorry that I have been absent. First of all, I want to mention Alan had asked me earlier today when the Healthcare Now Strategy Conference is. So I quick looked it up. I'm having to look things up, folks, right at the moment. It's just the way my brain's working. And the conference is actually in November 22nd and 23rd. That's Healthcare Now. So make sure that if you're interested in Medicare for All, and you all ought to be interested in Medicare for All, I cannot tell you, and I know you know, the American healthcare system is in trouble. Beyond all the things we know about what's happening at HHS, the actual delivery of healthcare in this country is in trouble. And if we do not get ourselves to a position where we provide healthcare as a basic human right to every person in this country, you can guarantee that we will be in more trouble. People will die, people are dying, and we must fight. We must fight together. Because if someone in your family gets sick, if someone in your family is unwell, you may well be called upon to be that caregiver at a time when you're not well able to handle it. So please prepare, know what's going on in your own state. We can't rely on just federal change at this time for sure, certainly. You've got to watch what's going on locally and the state level and nationally. Nationally, we all know we're going to win those elections when they come in 26, but there's a lot of elections between then and now. So let's do it together. Please stay safe in the healthcare system. Have an advocate. And the reason that I could be an advocate was because I worked for National Nurses United, the most powerful nursing union in the country. And that union taught me a lot about advocating for patients and what it means to get good nursing care, what the difference is between nurses who work without the protection of unions and nurses who must work just with the protection of corporate America. It's a very different delivery, I promise you all. So please find out what National Nurses United is doing with Medicare for All, because they have been at the forefront of that fight for a long time and will be there when we win. But also find out if you're in a state where NNU is really active, I guarantee you they're having events and they're having things going on around May Day. Find out about those things. Find a nurse and go with them. Nurses are powerful advocates, and make them your allies. They will keep fighting for you, but we have to fight for them too, folks. If you have a healthcare situation where you know there's not enough nursing care being provided, speak up, say it. The administrators need to hear it. So anyway, thank you all for your patience with my family. Positively Progressive will be back in September. I'm looking forward to doing some really good interviews. I was listening to Ro Khanna this morning talking in an interview on, I think, NBC. It doesn't matter. He was talking about Cleaver and doing some praising of Cleaver's leadership right at the moment. So I think I knew you'd be interested in that.
Well, again, it looks like Hartzell may not be running against Cleaver, as it turns out.
I know. Yeah, but it was real interesting to listen to it. I thought, oh, interesting stuff brewing, but good stuff for Democrats in Iowa. That's big doings. That's good stuff.
Well, actually, I'm sure one of the reasons Roe might have done that is because it's assumed with the carve up of the districts that probably would be the ending of Cleaver's career. That might be why I haven't seen the interview, so I don't know what it is. Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And I know Jim had his hand up, Jim Langford.
I see that. And thank you so much, Donna Smith. And
thank
Jim,
you all for your love. You are a family to me. And thank you all for the help and encouragement you've given our family. It's been a very difficult time, made much more difficult by the healthcare system, but much less difficult by all of you. So thank you.
Hey, I noticed that Dr. Bill Honigman's on the call, and I know Dr. Bill founded these calls back at the top of the COVID pandemic, these Sunday town halls. And I'm just thinking, this little idea popped in my head. Wow, what a great thing would be a positively progressive dialogue with Dr. Bill Honigman.
Ooh, what a great idea for right now, especially.
Yeah. Well,
I love it.
Let's see what your all schedules are like. Yeah. Thank you so much. And thank you always, Dr. Bill, for being here. Thank you, Donna. Jim Langford, what's on your mind?
I just wanted to piggyback on some information that Donna shared. The healthcare conference will be held here in Florida, in Rockledge, which is on the Space Coast. It's about 15 minutes from Cocoa Beach, where all of the Titan rockets and all of the Apollo missions and everything took off. It is the 22nd and 23rd of November. It's the weekend before Thanksgiving. PDA Florida, PDA Central Florida, and Medicare for All Florida are all partnering with Healthcare Now to sponsor this. And if you live in Florida and you are a healthcare advocate, we could use your help as far as advertising it, promoting it, getting your fellow Floridians to attend. We are expecting between 250 and 300 attendees if we're lucky. It is a national event, and we're hoping that we can get people to attend from all over the country. Alan, I was asked specifically to make sure that you knew you had a personal invitation to join us if you could. And Donna, of course, you're always welcome as well. But I'm kind of excited because I am one of the point people with Medicare for All Florida. And I've been working with Jillian from Healthcare Now to
be more fun than partying with Jim in Florida. Come on.
I'm not. I go to bed at 8 o'clock at night.
That's all right. We all do. We'll party early.
But anyway, we're hoping it'll turn out to be a really good event. And if you need any information, we will be sharing it as the details are formalized, probably within a couple of weeks. I'll have links for people to sign up and join, and register, and information about hotels in the area, and accommodations, as well as transportation from the various different airports in the region. We have one big one here in Orlando, of course, and then two smaller regional airports that would service the area, and people will be coming in from all over, hopefully. So hopefully pretty soon we'll have more information. And Donna, thank you for bringing it up, because that was something I wanted to mention today myself. So we're on the same page.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Donna. And Jim, hold on a second. But first, let me say, of course, this is Progressive Democrats of America National Town Hall, and every week we have these meetings here at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, and we focus on one or two themes across the town hall. They change each week. Progressive Democrats of America, of course, is one of the largest grassroots mass membership organization in the country. And we do this every week, and we apologize that we have everyone's cameras off. That is because we have been Zoom bombed on these calls, which created all sorts of problems for us. So to prevent that happening and also getting disrupted, we turn off all the cameras and everyone's mic who's not speaking. And we are going to turn the chat off now for about the next maybe 15, 20, 25 minutes. We do that whenever we introduce our first featured guest because we want people to focus on what they're saying, and the chats can become very disruptive. Now, I do want to say we're going to be talking about a resolution that was introduced at the DNC, Resolution 18, that had a content very similar to the Ban the Bombs Act that was introduced by Delia Ramirez. You might remember a month and a half ago or so, we had Delia Ramirez, Representative Delia Ramirez, on our town hall just a couple of days after she introduced that bill. Actually, it might have been a few days before it was introduced as we were rallying to get more co-sponsors in coordination with Representative Ramirez's office. And Resolution 18 was similar in content to the Ban the Bombs Act. It was introduced by a 26-year-old member of the DNC from Florida, Allison Minnerly, who will join us momentarily. And I do want to say just a quick, and Jim and Langford, I was going to ask you maybe if you want to just formally say hello to Allison as she starts off. The first question for Allison that I'd love her to start off on is just a little bit about herself and how she came not only to be a DNC member, but also how it came to introduce Resolution 18. And then we'll go from there. I think it's a very illuminating story as to what transpired at the DNC. I think it's something that we all can learn a lot from the initiative that Allison took and just how it all played out. It gives a clear sense of how the DNC can operate, what its scope of influence is, et cetera. But I did want to say, even before that, I noticed that Don Smith from not Donna Smith, but Don Smith from up in Washington State has joined us. And Don, people may know on the call, has a very strong dialogical relationship with his congressperson, whose name is Adam Smith. A lot of Smiths all of a sudden between Don and Adam Smith, who is not the person who wrote The Wealth of Nations, but he's a very hawkish Democrat. And I don't know if people saw this, but yesterday, and this is quite surprising, because Don Smith comes out of the long tradition of fiscally progressive, but foreign policy conservative Democrats in the state of Washington, going back to Scoop Jackson decades ago. And he signed on to the Ban the Bombs Act this weekend. And it's quite a breakthrough, given his influence within the Democratic caucus. So I did want to say that, and I think that's part thanks to the organizing we're doing. And we are going to be jumping right back in the next week in coordination with Rep. Ramirez, and again, asking other members of Congress on behalf of PDA to co-sponsor the Ban the Bombs Act. We'll be doing that as part of our congressional liaison program, continuing it going forward for that bill. Now, Jim, do you just want to say quickly, I believe you know Ms. Minnerly, and maybe you can just say hello and pass off the baton to her.
I do know Allison. Allison is a member of the Florida DNC. We've known each other for maybe 2 years now, I guess. She works very closely with our DEC here, our executive committee in Orange County. We have an incredible crew here in Central Florida, and Allison is kind of one of them, and one of the young Democrats that we probably have the most active young Democrat organization in the state. It's absolutely incredible. And she works closely with one of our extremely progressive young representatives, Ana Escamani, here in Florida. And I'm very proud to call her a friend. So welcome, Allison. It's very nice to see you today.
And can you unmute Allison?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's a not rainy day in Florida, which I'm sure Jim can attest is pretty lucky after the week we've had.
What's it feel like to be a national international hero?
I wouldn't go that far. I would just say that any person in the room that isn't just concerned with ladder climbing or a good LinkedIn post, would hopefully be compelled to do the same, which is what we really need to bring more of us out, more, selflessly motivated folks that care about what's happening, but also that want to do the right thing. And I'm just really hopeful that this has sparked a conversation, obviously within this group, but hopefully other people across the country. But what can we do, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it, maybe starts a conversation that a lot of people aren't ready to have, what we can do to kind of, make sure we bring that everywhere and reciprocate that energy.
Hold on, I apologize, but I'm going to bring this up. I think we're getting hit by some Zoom bombers. For the staff who can see, we have somebody who's tried to join our call. Do not let them in, named Adolf Eichmann. So do not let that person in. And if they have been let in, please knock them out. This happens to us here, as you're probably not surprised, Allison. How did you come to become a DNC member? I mean, not just a member of the Democratic Party, but to proceed to be a DNC member. Obviously, we're in a moment historically where, the youth of America were all understood to be with Bernie Sanders. You flash forward to 2024, and we're being told that the youth of America have switched over and are more sympathetic to Donald Trump than they ever were previously. So, yeah, how did you come to be involved with the Democratic Party and the DNC?
Yeah, I will say that just my first election was in 2016. So obviously, becoming a Democrat was the clear, sane choice at a time when Donald Trump came into power. So that's the only politics that I've ever known. But I will say that the journey to becoming a DNC member was a little bit different in that here also the scene. So in Florida, we get 11 elected members of the DNC that our state committee gets to send. So for those of you that maybe are involved in your local party, you might know that a state committee, which is kind of how each county sends its representatives to represent them in the whole state's party. So in our state, we get to vote on things like who our next state party chair is, some of the leadership roles, and there's other things related just the state of Florida's Democratic Party. And so within that body, we also get to send those 11 people to the DNC. And so early this year, back in January, when I got to our state committee meeting, I was there to vote for a new chair. I was there just to start my average day. I didn't think much of it at all. I just was going to do my little civic duty and go home. We had our slate of DNC candidates, and those people had been making robocalls. They had been doing text blasts, so many emails. I think anybody in this group from Florida that is a state committee member would know that your phone was overwhelmed with messages. And I did not have necessarily that apparatus with me, but I got there that day, and the young people that are part of our Young Democrats, Jim, said very proudly that we have a really large growing chapter of young people across the state of Florida that really care about getting more involved in party politics. And those same folks really noticed that out of the 70 candidates for our DNC slate, there was not really many young people, let alone young people that represented their values. And so that's really when we made the decision as a group that we needed to nominate somebody right then, right there from the floor to step up and to lead in this moment when we need young voices in the party. And I was just really lucky that through my floor nomination, the room in 1 minute speech, they were able to see that, they also want to change with me. And so even in a state like Florida, where our Democratic Party has gotten a little bit more conservative and still, we don't maybe have the most progressive takes as a state party, people there in that room were able to see, the conversation that we started that day as, meaningful enough that they elected me to the DNC.
Yeah, actually, and I mean, there's so much stuff here that we could talk about, and maybe I'll mention something, but leave it on the side, which is, of course, your fellow Floridian, David Hogg, became the centerpiece of a controversy around the place of young people inside the Democratic Party, which, whatever one thinks of how it was dealt with by leadership and the issues that were there, it wasn't dealt with well, I don't think, and it seemed to compound the problem for young people. But okay, quickly then, I will say this, I'll ask you this, then we'll go to your introduction of Resolution 18. But where do you think we stand with that? Do you see a space now that particular controversy is over for young people to now begin again to make a case for progressive politics, and that the Democratic Party is an avenue for progressive politics battle as a space of contestation for that, and that it can attract young people again?
I still think that generally, even if the conversation is done and David Hogg is no longer our vice chair of the DNC, I do think that there's lingerings of, what this means for the future. Just this week in Minneapolis, they voted to approve like a neutrality, clause for all of the leadership members of the DNC. So this conversation is still very much present, even if it's not through the lens of just talking about David Hogg. There's kind of like a reverberation of just generally the shift that we're seeing away from primaries and endorsements, and maybe just talk about progressivism within kind of leadership roles. And I think that service, but I ultimately think that when we talk about Resolution 18, it's going to kind of tie in that these are young people using their voices, talk about what we want. And oftentimes we, even though we're told to get involved in the party, to join in on the efforts that are already existing, we're still getting silenced a lot of the stops along the way.
Well, so what inspired you to introduce Resolution 18, and maybe just quickly again remind folks what that was at this past week's meeting of the DNC? Yeah.
This might be an uneventful answer, but I will say that just generally, the secretary of the DNC sends out an email, with updates, what you need to know going into the next DNC meeting. And I just simply saw that there was a Google form to enter a resolution. And when I began doing a little bit of research into what resolutions were and how they operated, I realized, oh, wait a second, if we can talk about policy in the resolutions as the DNC, this would be an opportunity for us to really meet ourselves like where our voters are, just because generally I think most people in this room know that it's like a 90-10 issue for our party. And I think all the young people that I organize with here in Florida are really fired up about how somehow we are having these conversations still, and also how we are shifting more towards pro-war policies. And I knew that this was an opportunity for us to have this conversation and to really bring it to that national scale. And I did not understand just how big this would get. I simply just was me, myself, and I on a little Google form. I did not know that a few days later, when I received a call from DNC staff and reporters and this and that this was going to become as big as it was. But ultimately, I'm just really glad that people are talking about it and that it's not going to go away.
In the original submission of the resolution, did you include the part that said 27 senators voted for something similar to this? Was that, that was a brilliant move. Rhetorically, that was a brilliant piece of concise argumentation. So props. I've never done one as well myself as that. So great job. So what happened? It was introduced. And yeah, just take us through the narrative quickly as to what transpired next.
Yeah, so I can walk this through, but really a timeline of events here is that in the beginning of August is when I submitted the resolution. I actually submitted it maybe an hour before the deadline because we're working on tight time frames and I was trying to learn as much as I could before I hit submit. So I got over that little bit of, fear of the unknown. I hit submit, and then maybe 2 days later I got a call from the DNC staff letting me know that they didn't think this resolution was going to pass and that maybe it wasn't worth it. And so honestly, the conversations that transpired after that weren't necessarily as productive as we would have hoped, but what did end up happening was that I have on so many people from across the country that are DNC members, because all of us are represented by DNC members in our state. And I highly recommend getting to know who those people are, because it's important that you know who you're represented by and that you can actually organize them too, because I don't think they've traditionally been organizing targets. And so really through this kind of solidarity that we built with other members from across the country, and then even when we're just talking with everyday people like you, I see some people in the chat here that I recognize that emailed, reached out, and were like, hey, give me a list. Who can I call? What can I do? Really, we saw like a grassroots surge of energy. And that's what led us to this past week, which was in Minneapolis, the DNC convenes. And so for this summer meeting, obviously the second day, really early in the morning, 8:30 in the morning, was when the resolutions committee began. And that's when we had to present our resolution, along with hearing the chair's resolution, which the chair filed a different resolution. It's called resolution number 3, for those that are interested. Generally, the biggest difference between Resolution 18 and Resolution 3 was that Resolution 3 had more of a strong focus on language that we see around Hamas and also calling for a ceasefire, but not necessarily going as far and outlining just how we get there, which is what our resolution sought to do by calling for an arms embargo and also calling for an end to military aid. So really the main differences were just the rhetoric, but also just outlining these actionable items that we could signal to our elected officials or the positions of the party. And the ultimate outcome was that while Resolution 18 did not pass, we saw that resolution number 3 that passed by the chair was actually pulled. The chair pulled his resolution and agreed upon the request of our co-sponsors from Resolution 18 to actually create like a task force or committee that will be forming hopefully in the near future to really change the party's platform possibly, but also to really just settle this conversation of how do we as Democrats become the party of peace and international law again.
And I suppose the one point of pressure that you and your allies did exert after the vote was made known from the resolutions committee is that you made it known that you would bring up on the floor of the general body on Wednesday. So all 400 plus members of the DNC would have a vote as to whether now to reintroduce and include Resolution 18. And maybe that point of pressure and Martin's, who had obviously introduced Resolution 3, the one that passed, it was a chair's resolution that he then pulled, was done not entirely out of the goodness of his heart, but then maybe to avoid something that he thought wouldn't be that what he would want it to, how he would want to go down on Wednesday. As it turned out, events in Minneapolis ended up interfering with what would transpire the next day. But by that time, Martin had pulled it. And it's interesting. I was on a call with Jim Zogby on Wednesday. I think a few people here were on the call with me, and Jim and I again had a little bit of an exchange. Jim and I are always allied in thinking through these issues and trying to figure out how best to approach it tactically, strategically. But he did see this as, okay, we'll flip it around, Alan. He said to me, yes, it's true. Resolution 18 should pass because we all have our eyes open and our ears open. We see what's happening, and we know the United States' influence on the situation. And Resolution 18 clearly addressed it better than Resolution 3. But look at it from the point of view of the forces that have dominated the Democratic Party positions. In other words, AIPAC and DMFI, and they couldn't be happy with Martin's decision to pull number 3. So it wasn't an out-and-out loss. Your thoughts on that, and then we'll open up to questions from the audience. Your thoughts on Zogby's take? Yeah,
I think Alan made a really great point here, which is that had Resolution 3 remained filed and remained up for discussion when it would have reached the full floor, there was definitely a possibility for it to be amended there, which I think would have honestly created a conversation, again, a separate conversation that I don't think that DNC leadership would have wanted. And so I think ultimately the decision to pull the resolution was to possibly prevent further discussion on the floor and to generally just get by more time, right? And so while we're going to use that time really strategically, and we are going to, hold the chair accountable into his promise for creating a commission and a resolution, I think that the win here is that our resolution has been supported by grassroots folks everywhere. Somehow, some way, the DNC became the prime organizing spot. I had people all across the country reaching out saying, I'm calling my DNC member, which I don't think I'd ever heard before. I don't think, let alone maybe even a year ago, I could have told you who my Florida DNC members were. And so I think that just seeing that general shift, that grassroots energy, along with the chair realizing that this had to be a compromise, that there had to be something that gives, because he knew that his position was not going to get the party to where it needed to be, was really interesting. And so for those that are like, Resolution 18 didn't pass, I urge everybody not to despair, not to feel sad. I think ultimately this is now a new chapter. We shouldn't have to have this chapter, right? I think this should be pretty clear to all of us that this is a pretty black and white issue right now. But I still think that for those that are, part of mainly the establishment, the ones that, again, make it harder for us progressives to get in there, I do think that this proves that we have power and we have a voice and we got to use it.
For sure. And it's hard for me not to think that what transpired at the DNC and the resolution of that, the resolution that neither resolution was adopted fully, might have influenced, again, a very traditionally hawkish Democrat in Adam Smith up in Washington. Washington, of course, is a very progressive state, but it has always had Boeing aircraft, a lot of defense industries there. And that senator in the past, Scoop Jackson, was so central in making Seattle such a key metropolitan area for the defense industries. So to have him call for the arms embargo is pretty amazing. It'll be interesting to see how much resonance that has. I know that when we go to the congressional offices in this next weekend, we let them know, hey, Adam Smith signed on to it. A lot of the Democrats are going to be like, whoa, okay, that's a change. And we're going to go to questions from the floor now, but I do want to call on Kendall Lavinia, who and ask her to unmute. I know that she might be traveling, but she's joined us. And Kendall is actually the interim national coordinator of Young Progressive Democrats of America. The previous executive director has just stepped aside temporarily to run for Congress, Hartzell Gray in Missouri. So Kendall will have the first question, but then I want to ask Allison, of course, if you're not that familiar with this history, don't worry about it. But my sense of the DNC and its influence and power is always that it's not that great when there is a Democrat in the White House. The DNC is very overdetermined by the White House in terms of strategy and direction for the party. But then when there's not a Democrat in the White House, the influence of the DNC is greater. Now, it can be overstated how much influence it could have, because it's not a parliamentary party. It's the candidates win the nomination. And so in each race, every single race, the people who are voting in the nominating process sort of decide what kind of Democrat they want to have win. Nonetheless, when there's no Democrat in the White House, and there's also not strong congressional leadership at the national level, and I think that's fair to say that's the case in this instance, the DNC's influence is much, much greater. Is that your sense right now, that the DNC the activists in the DNC have a real hand right now in shaping the direction of the Democratic Party?
I would say that anybody has a real hand in shaping the Democratic Party. That's from the local level up. I would even say that just this week I saw a lot of conversation online about in Iowa, the state Senate candidate that was able to flip a seat. So I think that in a party right now that is essentially, I would say, devoid of a real strong figure or too much national leadership, I think that this is a real time for anybody to use their voice and speak up, because people are looking for something, right? And I'm going to speak to something which is, really relevant here in Florida, but also personal to my family, which is that somehow, some way, I am the product of an entirely MAGA Republican family. I am the only Democrat in my entire family. Right now, I'm at my parents' house who have a "Make America Great Again" hat on their shelf, right? So I'll say this: it's just that what I can learn from them, from my family that was never really too political, but that really was drawn in by Trump. What draws them in the most, it's not just the policy, it's somebody that is willing to take action to do something. And I think so often Democrats come into power and we don't necessarily do something with the power that we have. And so that's why I say that in this time, when we don't have too much motion going on, we don't have too many people doing too much, we don't see a lot of policy being able to pass by virtue of the makeup of Congress and just generally the takeovers of so many of our state legislatures and in our states. I think that this is the time where people everywhere are just looking for someone that will speak up, will say something, will do something, which is a really big appeal for a lot of people on different sides of different issues. But I think it leaves a real window of opportunity for anybody. And the DNC right now has that window because when their party doesn't have necessarily the strongest vision right now, we're part of the conversation that shapes it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all that you're doing. And was Kendall able to unmute staff members? Let's see if Kendall. Hello, Kendall. Are you with us?
Hello. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Thank you for joining us, Kendall. Just any thoughts you might want to share with, obviously we at PDA, and then of course at YPDA, we deal with organizing specifically in this context where the Democratic Party, Bernie Sanders, AOC, very popular with young Americans, Zohran Mamdani, not so much the Democratic Party. So Kendall, you're anything you might want to share with Allison?
First, coming and talking with us today.
You're breaking up actually, Kendall. We can't hear you. Go for it. Try now.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, now we can. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here. It's been really interesting hearing you talk about your resolution. And it's definitely the thing that we need a lot more of. And from our perspective, I just wanted to hear your thoughts a little bit on taking more of an inside approach versus an outside approach as a young person, because I know that there's been a lot of movement away from establishment politics, obviously, as young people like myself included have begun to lose faith that the Democratic Party listens to young voices and progressive voices and wants to make that change. So there's been a lot of push from, outside organizations or even third parties like the DSA or Working Families Party. So what have you seen from your experience as a young person taking a more inside approach on your state level to wanting to transform the party from within? So how have you seen the value of that versus taking an outside approach?
This is a really good question. I think that I have several mini answers within this question. So the first and foremost I'll say is that in Florida, in our state here, a lot of our organizing work happens outside of the party. I myself work at a progressive nonprofit that organizes young people, but we've also seen national movements like March for Our Lives, like the Don't Say Gay walkouts that have all happened here. So I think in Florida, we're very familiar with organizing in the outside of the party structure. But I think what's really interesting, what's a unique opportunity is that so many times we forget, like I totally did not even understand that I would be able to have an influence on who my state party chair was or who, my local elected officials are. And what really we've done here in Florida is that a lot of young people now are trying to lean into their local chapters. I think Jim Langford mentions our Young Democrats of Orange County, which is here located in the kind of Orlando area. And what we do is we're really strategic with how we make our endorsements, right? Yesterday, we did a candidate panel, and we're going to endorse a candidate in our local city council race. And that's the person that we're going to show up with. That's what we're going to show up for. We're going to knock doors. We're going to make calls. And that's somebody that we ask some hard questions to. So kind of even from the inside angle, right? We're pulling in people and we're saying, hey, listen, we know that you care about these progressive values. But if you are able to come and use your voice and your talent in local party structures, whether that's your PDA chapter, whether that's your Young Dems chapter, you are able to maybe have a more direct say. And so kind of the organizing model that we're building here really translated to what I tried to do here in the DNC. And I really just urge everybody that's thinking like, it's so frustrating. I feel this way all the time, right? It's frequently discouraged. And I think a lot of us maybe are here not because we love the Democratic Party, but because we're frustrated or because we want to make it better. And I hope that for anybody that has felt that way, that has read a news article and been so frustrated, or even seeing what happened this week in the DNC and, felt upset, that this is not the time to turn away. It's time to turn in, because I was one of those people, along with so many others in Florida, that was like, oh, is it worth it? And we've really found that on the local level and building up now to the DNC, we've been able to leverage our representation and organize and mobilize around candidates and issues that we care about. And I think that all of us have the opportunity to do that if we really try, even if it can be really annoying at times. I know it can be really frustrating, but it's a model that we're building on here in our state, and that I really hope all of you can build on in yours as well.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Kendall. I'm going to move on. Mark Harrison, you had your hand up and then it came down. And I know I owe you a call and you might just be frustrated with me. And that's why you dropped your hand down. But there you go, Mark.
I decided to pass on.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mark. And I'll call you, I promise, this evening. Okay, I owe you a call. Okay, let's go over to the top of the stack and go to Robert Hansen. Question for Allison Minnerly, from a DNC member from Florida.
Hi, Allison. Thank you so much for being on this call. I totally agree with what you're doing. Totally agree that the Gaza issue, with your point of view on the Gaza issue. The national press say the Gaza issue is not in the top 10 issues of U.S. voters. And I was curious, how do you respond to that? And I don't believe that, but I want to hear your opinion on it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that even if Gaza specifically might not be in the top 10, according to that statistic, I do think that generally these are just values held by the Democratic Party, right? So I mentioned this earlier, but human rights, international law, especially at a time when we have a lawless president, are still really important to our base and our voters. And I think that this is just one of those ways that we can signal through our party leadership, through our vision that we put forward in our platform, that that's going to continue to be the case. And just generally that we are the anti-war party. And I really think that for most people, even if this is not the most salient thing for them, it's one way that we really need to keep framing things, because it's core to who we are and it's core to who we should be.
Yeah, and I also would say I've looked at polls like that, and my sense is that that's a very skewed way of looking at it, because this particular issue actually is, it may poll down in 10th or 15th among the general population. Top is the economy by a long shot over everything. And now probably Trump and authoritarianism, so on, immigration issues. But it is much more than it is the top issue for more people than many of the other issues that may rank ahead of it. And so you actually lose votes on this issue at a significant degree. And I think we saw that in some polls that followed up afterwards. Let's go to Hillary Keys. Please unmute, Hillary. Hillary?
Hi. Thank you, Allison, for this resolution. I'm at a place where I'm very conflicted because I have family in Israel, and one of the things that I want to put forth is that, we here in the United States have a horrible, terrible dictator in Donald Trump, and Israel has a horrible, terrible dictator in Netanyahu and his minions. And I think it's really important that we look at it in that frame, because I think that's why the things that I'm hearing that feel very anti-Semitic, and I'm not saying that wanting to stop what's going on in Gaza is anti-Semitic, because I think it's horrific.
Hillary, it's very hard to hear what you're saying, but I did hear you use the term anti-Semitism. I, of course, am Jewish, self-identified. I don't see my activism on the issue as even remotely anti-Semitic. In fact, I think quite the opposite. But I will ask Allison how she's thought through that issue and the relationship of accusations of anti-Semitism to, advocacy on behalf of the people in Gaza, et cetera.
That I don't see it that way.
Okay, thank you. Your connection is very weak, so let's let Allison talk, and then we'll go to the next question. Thank you, Hillary. Allison?
Yeah. Okay. So generally, this is something that I did encounter. There are a lot of folks that had a similar question, right? And I think that one of the biggest things that drove me in writing this resolution was not religion, right? That's probably the last thing that would have come to my mind. And I think for so many of us on this issue, it's hard, because when we have these conversations with our Jewish friends, families, and loved ones, that this topic comes up. And I will say this, I think that when we frame things in the sense that this is, the Israeli government, like you mentioned, Netanyahu, who is really abusing his power right now, and we're just seeing so much loss of life that is entirely avoidable in this conflict. This is about a secular government. This is not about a population or a religion. And I think it's really important that as an anti-war issue, we continue to keep the focus on that, because ultimately this is US dollars going to bombs, to weapons, and in a conflict abroad. And I think that so many voters are entirely displeased by that concept of war. And I know that that's a really core value to our party.
Thank you. And again, I want to apologize to you, Hillary, just so you understand, again, your connection was very bad. It was hard to make out the words you were saying. So that's why we moved on. But thank you, Hillary. And then Timothy Wheeler, please unmute.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes. Well, thank you, Alan, for having Allison Minnerly on this program. I think it's outstanding. And I just wanted to report that Representative Emily Randall issued a very strongly worded statement about the war in Gaza after the New York Times published those front page article and a photograph of the children starving in Gaza. And the Clallam County Democratic Party then adopted unanimously a resolution supporting Emily Randall and calling on our two senators, Cantwell and Murray, to join in condemning this famine, this mass starvation that is occurring. So I think this is a very, very timely topic to be discussing. And Allison, I wanted to ask you, first of all, I just wanted to thank you for your initiative on this and to take this issue to the DNC. And I wanted to ask you about the situation in Gaza itself, about the conditions that stirred you and got you to take the initiative. Can you describe the conditions and just what it was that you were reacting to when you took the initiative that you did? And incidentally, it sounds to me like you had a lot of support, especially from younger Democrats, like college Democrats and so on. So if you could talk about that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Timothy.
Yeah, absolutely. So here in Florida, I am part of not only my local Young Democrats chapter, but also our statewide Florida Young Democrats. And I think that's something that's a really common and easy conversation between all of us, is that we are anti-war, but also that in particular, we have watched the Israeli government over the last few months through our phone screens, right? Through our Instagram stories, through our Twitter feeds, through just about any social media that we can find. This is one of those unique times where this is a major conflict that young people are watching happen in real time. I think we've all, lived through different, crises and wars and things like that. But this in particular is a little bit different just because this is just so much more accessible and we can see real-time updates. And I think it's just been generally very disturbing for all of us to see the same images that you just referenced, where there are quite literally starved frames and bodies of young people, of children, of families, of entire cities just leveled. And I think it's just really disturbing and upsetting imagery that I would hope would move anybody to feel sympathy and compassion, but also just when we realize that a lot of us here do have a say in local party politics or just care a lot about political work in general, that those of us that are tuned in have a responsibility to speak up. And that's exactly what I did, kind of just following the lead of the young people in my community and just across our state.
I shouldn't chime in here, but I can't help myself here. I did get to meet Emily Randall. She's a very nice person. In fact, in talking to Emily in person, she's the kind of person who just exudes a kind of big-heartedness, and I thought her statement was really great. However, she points to something that is even though 27 out of 48 or 47 Democrats agreed with Bernie Sanders' proposal to it wasn't an official piece of legislation, but to basically not sell offensive armaments to Israel, I think was in that statement. But senators can be a real barrier to this. So this is, again, a disconnect between now even Adam Smith in Washington, and Emily Randall, of course, Pramila Jayapal, and then the senators so often being much more in the pocket of AIPAC and DMFI. And of course, winning a Senate race, much more expensive than winning a House race. So I don't know if you saw, Allison, the dialogue with Representative Richie Torres this past week with a comic, a Jewish American comic, not a left-wing progressive kind of guy, but it was a very, very interesting exchange. It's hard to describe to the audience in summary, but within just an exchange about Gaza, Richie Torres, very much supported by AIPAC and DMFI, defended Israel, quickly accused the Jewish American comic of being anti-Semitic, and the comic was just incredulous that Torres was saying these things. Just your thoughts on that, and how deeply entrenched might this connection with AIPAC be among a portion of the Democratic Party that will make even in the party, let alone the general body of Congress, breaking with this policy so difficult?
I think it's deeply frustrating that right now, how it stands is that a lot of people try and make this a conversation that becomes all about religion. And I think that, I myself am not a Jewish person, so that is not something that I, have lived experience with. But what I will say is just for me and for so many young people in our state, it's just a night and day, like clear issue of what's right from what's wrong. And I think that it's really frustrating. I've seen Richie Torres online dialogue for years kind of have these talking points. And I think what's really interesting now, and this is for anybody that's watching to start following, is there's actually the Stop AIPAC tracker, which it's an account online that they really track just the donations for different politicians related to AIPAC and DMFI type things. And whenever they post about a statement or talk about this issue, they'll actually comment with a real-time tracker of just how much money they received. And so I'm not saying that your support for Israel has to be rooted in your funding, but so often we do find that special interests are a huge, huge issue, particularly when it comes to our foreign policy on Israel. And I think that interview was obviously disappointing. It was frustrating because I think so often you try and have the conversation and it becomes about religion when in fact it doesn't always have to be that way at all. And I think it's just an easy way out of a conversation.
Thank you so much. So we're at the top of the hour, everybody. Let's see here. We do have to go on to our next segment and then let Allison go. We have the 8 people who have their hands up. When we get through the next segment, we'll have an open time for Mike. And so Michael, Tyler, John, Maggie, Melissa, Bonnie, Hillary again, and Catherine, if you want to chime in, then we can get that part of the show sent over to Allison. Maybe she can answer your questions via email. But for now, Allison, your final thoughts, and from all of us here at PDA, thank you. I mean, look, if you hadn't done what you did within an hour of the thing closing down, right? You just said that, right? This all wouldn't have happened. So thank you so much for taking that initiative, having the courage to hit send on what was a beautifully worded resolution. And it's going to be great working with you going forward on so many fronts. So your final thoughts for the day.
My final thoughts are that I would be remiss if I did not make an organizing call to action, which is just always how I as an organizer think, which is that while I don't have the next steps just yet, for those that are kind of following along from home, keep staying tuned into this issue. I think another little research project and homework assignment for everybody here is to look up who your DNC members are. I think it's really important. I know there's been a lot of talk about Washington State, which is 4 DNC members, one of which actually voted yes on a resolution and made a beautiful speech about just generally why she was moved to support my resolution and why she thought it was necessary. And that's just one example, right? Never had I met Sophia Dannenberg, who was a Washington DNC member, but her remarks are just really beautiful and really inspiring. And I think that if we could all have a relationship personally, or even try and have a professional relationship with the people that represent us, it will start a new dialogue and a new conversation. So for those of you that are at home, start looking up who your DNC members are. If you need help finding them, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to help put you in the right direction. But it's so important that you stay in tune with who they are. And then also, whatever next steps happen with this commission, task force, that, obviously, Alan, I'll stay in touch with all of you and help you guys stay plugged in, because I think it's so important that the conversation doesn't just end here, right? Obviously, the chair put a pin in this conversation for right now. They weren't ready to have it that day in Minneapolis, but we're going to keep going because it's not going away. And especially as we approach 2026, I think that one of the most important framings of this is not just moral, right? Because I think so many of us here, we see the images, we see the horror, and we're moved to act. I do think that for a lot of these people that are more establishment folks or that are like traditional Democratic Party folks, the conversation has to be electoral too, because we're at a time where the party is siding with 7%. 7% of Democrats are supportive of the current position. That leaves the other 93% of us, which I assume are many of the folks in this room, here to try and lead this conversation and also demand better. And so I think that falls on all of us, and I'm happy to keep you all plugged in, but I'm really excited I'm going to join the Progressive Democrats of America. I'm really excited to become a member.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for everything. And yes, we'll be in touch. And yes, and everybody on the call too. Let people know about someone like Allison Minnerly and young people getting involved in the Democratic Party, and encourage younger people. They're going to be around longer than us older people, and this country and this world really needs their engagement with a political system that's locked into a two-party system. Democratic Party, Republican Party. There's one of them that can give voice to the politics that we express here at PDA, and that Allison has given expression to so beautifully. So thank you so much, Allison Minnerly, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for.
Thank you. And so look, in a few minutes, we're going to be joined by two people, Paul Stapleton Smith, two PDAers, and Tina Shannon. Paul, of course, from Arizona, and Tina from Western Pennsylvania, to talk about the union movement and it's Labor Day weekend. We'll remind people of the events going on around the country tomorrow. In fact, we're going to do that right now with Mike Fox, who gives us our PDA update on our PDA to-dos at the top of the second hour. And then we're going to come back and have a dialogue with Paul Stapleton Smith and Tina Shannon. And then we'll go back to the queue for the questions, and we'll wrap in solidarity with the working people of America and the world on this Labor Day weekend. And let's all go out and have a great time tomorrow, and come back on Tuesday ready to defeat MAGA and defeat fascism here in America, rebuild a progressive democratic society here in America. So, Mike Fox, how are our PDA to-dos looking at the top of the hour?
Okay, number one, I've just got to say, is she a rock star or what?
Yep.
And notice, if you will, gang, how did she close? With to-do. All right?
Wow.
Now,
yeah.
You know, bottom line, unprompted, she knows that, all right, I just spent 45 minutes somewhere. Let's turn this into something. So solidarity with her in that regard. And with that in mind, I'm going to hit up some thank yous here real quick. And we'll get back to other to-dos. We got, I want to thank the following people who have donated. There is double dipping phone banker Bo up in Philly. Bo in Philly, that's just fun to say. And Margaret and Lisa. Lisa, thank you for your more than kind $100. Anybody out there, candidly, we're not necessarily looking for big money here. Any solidarity is wonderful. However, when someone does make that kind of a commitment, I've got to show my solidarity by saying, all right, gang, anybody who can do $100 or more to show solidarity with Lisa, I will show solidarity in return. So I'll match the next three figure item, okay? Or three-figure donation, sorry. And thank you, Lisa. And thank you, Michael, and phone banker Betsy, double dipping, and phone banker Beverly, and Dr. Deutsch, double dipping Dr. Deutsch as always, and phone banker Michael. Look at all those double dippers. And Karen, and phone banker Linda, and Judith, our state coordinator out in Kansas. James, thanks so much. And Neil, you're always here. Thank you, brother. And Betsy, and Gene, Quincy, George, for your kind monthly donation. Thank you, brother. And Jonathan, Janice, Dr. Bill, as always, and Dr. Sonneborn, double dipping Dr. Sonneborn. He's on the phone with us every week. And Maxine and phone banker Mary, who's in the game 6 days a week. Thank you so much, Mary, for all of your help and for your kind donation. Phone banker Aaron and Carol up in West Virginia, our chapter leader there. Phone banker wears 87 hats and likewise donates. Thank you so much, Carol. And William, and as always, Michael Shapiro out of Chicago every single week. Thank you for your $5, brother. You rock. All right, so let's keep this momentum going. We haven't hit goal anywhere yet, but we're moving in the right direction. I'll be tossing into the chat the two important links. Number one, to volunteer. That's pdamerica.org/volunteer. Number two, there's also an ActBlue link. If you can't see that, just get to pdamerica.org and hit that donate button and do anything you can. Solidarity, solidarity. Back to you, Alan.
Yes, Mike, and as Don Smith just put into the chat, there is this issue as to whether he has signed on to the Ban the Bombs Act. And I got the information from Pod Save America, and I agree, Don Smith, that the interview did become a little ambiguous as to whether he had actually signed on to the bill. I believe of course, there's a very popular podcast, Pod Save America. I believe the host framed it as he had signed on, and then they asked him about the content of the bill, and he seemed to sort of suggest that he was only supporting it in part, not in its full iteration. So that did make it a little confusing. But it was, I thought, left at the idea that he was signing on to the bill. At least that's how I interpreted it. I did only watch it once. And I might have possibly been a little bit distracted while it was on, as is often the case when you're watching these things. But I, of course, paid attention to it, and he certainly was on Pod Save America. So it's true. We may have not Adam Smith's name on that specific legislation, but the spirit of it he was supporting. And I think we'll maybe, Don, we can talk maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday and see how we can go back to him and ask him to sign on, because it would be very important for the specific bill. I know organizations are going to continue pushing that bill in the coming days. So that'll be clarified. And Don, you're right. What you wrote does resonate a little bit with what I saw with some little confusion on the interview with the folks on Pod Save America. I couldn't even be mistaken about whether he signed on or not. But I remember that exchange with the host and him about what the Ramirez bill said and how he responded to that. So yes, thank you. And sorry, I'm confusing things. I'm not really clarifying things. Okay, so in this section of the town hall, we're going to shift subject matter. And look, we obviously were on a very, very important subject matter in that we were talking about the direction of the Democratic Party and also the horrible situation in Gaza and the relationship of U.S. foreign policy to the continuation of, and not the ending of, the horrible, horrible, horrible situation in Gaza. Hugely important issues. I want to now frame what we're about to talk about as something that we have to start to consider to be a crisis, and not necessarily a crisis, but leaning towards a crisis just as significant as the crisis of the rising authoritarianism and totalitarianism in the United States, which is the weakening of the labor movement, the intentional weakening of the labor movement as part of the fulfillment of the Project 2025 agenda by the Trump administration, and how it's essential that an organization like PDA reconfirm its support for the labor movement, and I would argue make stronger coordinated partnerships with the labor movement going forward, beginning basically right now or in this whole period of the Trump period. And this has already been negatively impactful on society, what's been transpiring in terms of the weakening of the labor movement. And of course, we don't have new statistics about how many labor union members have lost jobs, particularly in the federal government. And we also know that maybe the statistics coming out of the Labor Department may not be very reliable going forward. But we are in a situation where certainly federal employees who are members of unions are under a direct assault, and that is a direct assault that extends also to those unions. And we also know that the Project 2025 set is, in spite of what the head of the Teamsters may want you to believe, the contemporary Republican Party remains a staunchly anti-union operation. And under the Trump administration and Project 2025, they understand themselves to be at war with the labor movement, and they look to weaken it as much as they possibly can. But that also means we now have a situation where these great institutions that are popular with the American public, we need to reconfirm our partnership. Of course, most union jobs that, people were union jobs when Trump was inaugurated, they still have union jobs, and the unions still exist. And they're supported by the rank and file. They're supported by the general population, and we need to join with them as part of the anti-Trump resistance. Join with them. We always have been supportive, of course, at PDA, but really, really do this and make this a part of what we're about. Paul Stapleton Smith, are you with us? Is Paul with us, and is he unmuted? Yeah, ask to unmute. There you are, Paul. And also, Tina Shannon is going to join the conversation with us. Tina is one of our Western Pennsylvania coordinators, and Randy Shannon and Tina Shannon have been longtime members of PDA, part of the core PDA family, anchoring PDA in Western Pennsylvania and Metro Pittsburgh area. And they're both great supporters of the union movement in that region and across the country. And of course, Paul Stapleton Smith is himself a member and an organizer for YATSE, and is very coordinated with the Arizona AFL-CIO and the national organized labor movement in general. And is both Tina and Paul are great liaisons for PDA2 organized labor across the country. So welcome to both of you. How you doing, Paul? How you doing, Tina?
And I don't see Tina, but I can tell you how grateful I am that she's with us and that everybody on this call is with us, Alan, and just enormously excited about the opportunities to do something beyond passive resistance together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and hey, welcome, Tina. How you doing?
Good.
Good, great.
Like everybody.
Yeah, for sure.
Not exaggerated or anything.
Well, I've been working with people. I actually spoke to Tina a little bit about this morning. I haven't really filled Paul in so much. I'm working with a bunch of people, including some very experienced, union organizers and people who've worked in unions their whole careers, about beginning to think about the word strategy and the strategy to defeat MAGA, to defeat Trump, and to preserve a democratic society in the United States of America. Because I think we now, 8 months into the Trump administration, know we are against the most serious attack on America as a free society, an open society, one where unions can operate honestly, and all of that now in ways that all of us never believed would be possible in this country to this degree is under threat. And unions are clearly poised to oppose this. And if we're going to defeat them, we have to get it together and organize with our comrades in organized labor. And let's go to Paul first. Your thoughts on this moment we're in right now on Labor Day weekend 2025.
So, and to be clear, and I'm so anxious to hear what Sister Tina has to say. I just dropped into the chat some handy links that will be so useful to folks who are hunting for follow up on what we're going to discuss. But the short story is that we all know on this call, because I'm part of the choir, absolutely, and that is that we've got to build our movement with effective, to your point, Alan, strategies, not just passive resistance and know your rights. Yes, that's incredibly important, and yes, we're doing that. I just did a training for 180 people on nonviolent resistance. Reverend Lawson and MLK's training. We'll be doing those over the next 24 months for free. The important thing is that we're bringing in our community groups, our 501c3s, our 501c4s, which is my specialty as a political coordinator, is going out into the community actively and bringing folks together into organizing channels. None of us are alone. We sometimes feel alone as we tell our members, you're never, ever alone. But our 12 plus million members, just in the AFL-CIO, are mobilizing on a scale right now that is so energizing and exciting to me because it's thoughtful. And we have a mandate to go out into our communities and to bring people into relationships, active relationships. And it's something you and Alan, you and I have talked about this before, is we want and need relationships before we want relationships before we need them. You make them before you need them. Well, we're right here. We've got to make relationships with each other, from the indivisibles to lamplighters and common defense and all of our community organizations, specifically on the Democratic Party. And I shan't filibuster this anymore, but making sure that we're doing overtures on our inside out strategy with our Democratic Party. That party belongs to us. And while our members are not all Democrats, we also have an obligation when we do our endorsements and our coordinated political campaigns. We're extremely active and focused on those political campaigns that everything PDA fights for, including the 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights, which is a good example of where we're putting that into platforms and we're making every candidate pledge to that. So with that, I really want to hear what Sister Tina has to say, please.
Go for it, Tina.
So I'm on the opposite end of what Paul's talking about. And I'm also like tinier than him. So I'm like really grassroots. And our chapter from the very beginning has worked with our local labor council. And so often I go through periods where I attend our labor council meetings. And I'm going through another period where I've started attending again. And I've never seen them talking the way they're talking now. I mean, they are, I live in what used to be a labor community, come from a labor family, but I'm not in a union. And so I know labor pretty intimately, like warts and all. And so when I go to a labor council meeting and I hear an IBEW building trades president talking about fascism and, how we have to stand up for the undocumented, like I've never heard that happen before. But also, we have our community groups. We managed to get a bunch of community groups affiliated with labor to do human rights banquets every year. We did that before we were shut down by COVID. And at the end of it, we had Reverend Barber speak. We had Nina Turner speak. We had, like close to 500 people. And I was able to fill half of a room with progressives, environmental groups, all kind of people, the peace group. So what we tried to get so we have a new chair of the committee, the Labor Council committee that does this banquet. And the community members who have been longtime participants in this committee, we wanted to get Jimmy Williams Jr., who is the president of the International Union of Painters and Affiliated Trades. And his dad was president before him. And that union has doubled down on organizing the undocumented. So we wanted to get him, but we were immediately, instead of him, we were offered the president of the Pennsylvania Building Trades Council, who is somewhat less progressive than Jimmy Williams Jr. So at the same time, and then right after that, Governor Shapiro from Pennsylvania, which is where I'm from, appeared with Trump So those are the political, I only say that, it sounds complicated because it is. Because what we're doing is navigating political waters with organized labor. So we don't get to go in there and tell organized labor what to do. We go in, and it's a lot like what was described by the last presenter. You know, it's like navigating political waters.
Mm-hmm.
But so, you know, I have these two things that are very illustrative of working with labor right now. You have like on the ground local presidents talking about supporting immigrants, opposed to ICE. At the same time, leadership is still trying to navigate the upper levels of capital,
Mm-hmm.
you know, secure what's needed for the jobs. So I just encourage people to like find your local labor council, do your get out the vote work with your local labor council. Just like show up, doesn't matter if they're supporting a mediocre Democrat or not. Get in the car, go do the door-to-door canvassing with them, get to know them, go to the labor picnic, go to the parade. You know, show up and get to know, you really have to get to know your local labor people. I know it's easier for me because I live in a community that has always had labor, like, you know, has been led by labor. You know, if you're a Democrat, get your Democratic Party to support officially support labor, take resolutions to support labor, like, all kind of whatever you can think of.
My understanding right now from what there's all this stuff about, who's really running the Trump administration, what's Donald Trump's relationship to not just the direction of the administration, but what's the agenda being pursued. And there seems to be a slight consensus developing that he does, of course, change the direction of what's being focused on by his statements. And of course, the press follows his every word. But that in terms of actual follow through on policy, the people running the administration now become Stephen Miller, and we know what his docket is, and then Vogt, the guy from the Heritage Foundation who wrote Project 2025. And I think what's happened, and this speaks to something that Tina said, and Paul, I'm wondering your thoughts on this. How the sort of like brain trust of national organized labor is approaching the Trump administration, that Trump may even go out, and when he announces this tariff, this thing is going to bring in new jobs, new industry to the United States, he will claim that this could produce new high wage jobs and even not shoot down unions. But then upon the next level of response from the administration, especially led by Vogt, which again, this is in his docket, it is staunchly anti-union. So yeah, Paul, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, briefly in that regard, we don't have enforcement of our federally protected labor rights right now. We have an NLRB that's paralyzed. That is Trump's deal. We cannot adjudicate or appeal decisions on federal labor law right now. We're frozen out completely. And so, he's taken all of our, what little protections we had at the federal level, because filing an unfair labor practice under labor law, right? We don't usually adjudicate these in civil courts. I think most of the people on this call know that. We have our own administrative process. He's denied quorum to that board. There is no way for us, aside from direct action and electing better people and making sure that they really vote for changes that we have. He's taken that away from us. All of my members are defenseless right now. We have unfair labor practices filed against employers right now that ordinarily just having them filed would put pressure on the employer to do a settlement. That's what we always seek, right? Is a fair settlement, right? Fair contract. So anything that he might say on a Tuesday at 2 p.m. About workers and workforce is already a lie, because he's already gutted our protections there. That's not an exaggeration. With a swoop of a pen, 430,000 federal workers collective bargaining agreement is wiped away. Oh, we should go to the NLRB and appeal that. Oh, that's right, we can't. And what are we going to do? Take it to the Supreme Court? And here we are. So that's my quick take on it. It's beyond bluster. It's outright deceit and hostility. And hence what our sister just suggested is, we're not just doing active resistance. They certainly went after federal employees, public sector employees. They're coming after all of our unions. And to be clear, it's not because we're in a union and have a collective bargaining agreement. It's our political campaigns, because we're organized, because we do collaborative and coordinated campaigns. That's what the capitalists hate about what we do, because they come to the table and they do contracts, right? With labor peace. It's the political side. It's the political side. That's the through line for all of us. And that's our mobilization commandments right now, is politically that we become the unstoppable, most powerful force representing our communities, our families, and for God's sake, our economy, right? And Alan, the last thing is, you and I have talked before about the phrase political economy. We call it political science, but the economy is only politics. That's all it is. That's all it is, and that's the only thing the capitalists care about. And with that, I hope I addressed your question, brother.
Right, exactly. I mean, if the free markets, that's a fiction. Markets are created by laws, and laws are created by people. That's on the market side of things. I just, even as you were talking, I went and I Googled what does Project 2025 say about NLRB, and it threw back to a Guardian article from August 2024. And of course, it's just the goal is to just absolutely savage the labor laws in the United States. And we see the direct, of course, impact most thoroughly in these first few months on federal unions, and they're going
To
full
your point,
court.
brother, if I may, I have a copy of that portion of 2025, and you know what it is for me? It's a checklist. They did this, they did this, they did this. That's not an exaggeration. That's not an aspirational thing. That's a to-do checklist for them. So,
Tina, back to you. Your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I've been explaining to people. So I often end up at the translation point between my labor friends and people who aren't in labor, who are progressive. And one thing that I've been explaining to people that really seems to hit well is that labor is an essential building block for civil society. You know, that you can't have, if you want democracy, you have to have workers' rights. You have to have workers who can speak out. You have to have whistleblowers. You have to have an organized force to do the political work that Paul is talking about. And people, it's really interesting to talk to people like that, because like, I think earlier in my political career, I felt like I had to, like, I don't know, speak about more concrete things, and now I find that like people are really hungry for these big kind of concepts, especially if you can link it to their life, like their everyday life. If you can like give them a big concept, and then like I can talk about what it was like when I was growing up here in Western Pennsylvania, when we were so successful here and we were so prosperous that women were starting to get jobs in steel mills and be able to be single parent income families. And the civil rights movement took off from the UAW union stronghold in Detroit, and then moved into the steel industry. And, you know, the Black community was getting jobs and getting jobs fairly in the industry. And, you know, like I was a kid and people had cars and people had boats on the river and kids had piano lessons, and steelworkers sent their kids to college, paid for their kids' college. And then I read a book that, you know, one of the reasons Pittsburgh is a healthcare hub is because of the benefits, the medical benefits of union steelworkers created a healthcare hub in Pittsburgh. And that's why we were able to survive as well as we have with the deindustrialization. So, and then you link that to, and that's what it means to have a building block of civil society.
Yeah, no, and you know, obviously Professor K joins me on these calls periodically, and he's a Roosevelt scholar, but he will be the first to tell you that Roosevelt did what Roosevelt did. And there was one other block of institutions in America that drove Roosevelt being able to do what he did and that pushed him to do what he did. And that was organized labor. And that's just the history of, institutional history. And we are a society that operates, or had operated, through these established institutions. And now you come in with Project 2025 and the Trump administration, and they are hell-bent on destroying a set of institutions. And they of course, have this horrible, very powerful alliance with the Silicon Valley oligarchs, who have never had any use for unions, and at least the large body of them haven't, including Musk, of course. Well, Paul and Tina, I suppose the great conversation, but it is Labor Day weekend, so it's a weekend to celebrate organized labor. So, just to both of you, your thoughts on given all that we've spoken about, and it's dire, but it all just calls for organizing and solidarity at this hour, at this moment, this Labor Day weekend. So, yeah, your thoughts on how people can, and PDA can coordinate with the organized labor in their areas, and build a stronger coalition between progressives and organized labor, and that coalition as the bedrock to defeat MAGA and American fascism. Either one of you.
And if I may, Sister Tina, you said it at the outset, and Alan, I came prepared. I got that out. So I do this work, the interface, just like Tina suggested, between the Democratic Party and Labor. That's what part of what I'm charged with. So it's very simple. Identify your friends and families who are in unions now, right? Friends and family, friends and neighbors who are in unions. We're surrounded by union members. Two is invite a union leader to your next meeting, whatever your next meeting is. Whatever, and don't do it once. Don't do it once. We can't organize in rural by going once. You go there over and over. Every meeting, have them speak to those issues. The third thing is I dropped those web links into the chat. Very important. There's a strike map on aflcio.org. Workingamerica.org is there, to Tina's point about working in campaigns. If you're not in a union, Working America is created for people who cannot or otherwise will not be able to join a union. And that's part of that coordinated campaign. And then on the Democratic side, on the inside, join your labor council. And if you don't have a labor council, start a labor council. And we have several union leaders that are on the executive board and so on and so forth here in Arizona Party. And I just want to thank Tina for bringing that up, the interface. These are the to-dos, as Mike Fox says. They're very simple, very simple. Call a union leader and become familiar with them. And then promote their messages. They all have websites, they all have social media. We talk on the national level, we talk on the international level, but really it's all local. What are the local issues that your labor unions are engaged? And then go hit those picket lines, go to their events, but for God's sake, invite them to yours, make them regular, form a relationship. And that's my short take, my short take on that, brother.
Tina.
And I would add, make sure you have labor on your podium. If you're putting on a rally, if you're anytime you're doing anything public, and I know that seems hard at first because, you don't know who the labor people are, but that's why I say go to their events. Pay attention to who's having the rallies. If labor's having a rally, show up, bring your people, and let them know you're there. If you bring 3 or 4 people to a rally, you will get their attention. And the good thing about going to the rallies and going to the get out the vote work and going to the picnics is that the people who are doing that work are usually the labor progressives, which is who you want to find, and that's who you want to put on your podium. So, I wish I had an easier way to do it, but you really have to get to know your labor people. And I think Paul's idea of also talking to your family members and find out who your labor people are close to, work close, work far out. You're Democrat, you know how to network. It's just, and you've got to start now because, you got to get to know these people.
Yeah, no, it's, at the very last 6 weeks of the last election cycle, in coordination with John Nichols, and I was brought as a representative PDA onto calls with the Harris campaign. We were part of the progressive table. Mainly the dialogue was one direction, unidirectional. But I was able to put forward something that John was promoting, which was, of course, expressed to me, and we shared this expression. Rather than touring the country with Lynn Cheney, how about touring Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Pennsylvania with Shawn Fain? And, I know that Nichols had coordinated that with Fain, and, I was able to express it. People were like, great idea. Well, of course, nothing came of it. I don't know what came of it ever contacting Shawn Fain. I don't think he ever was contacted by the campaign. But that does bring up something too, which is that the Republican critique of Democratic messaging is always going to be harsh. It's going to be laden with BS and all that, the sort of anti-woke crap that they put out there. That's just the machinery of propaganda from Fox on down the line. And it's going to hit people in wave after wave, and most of it is actually groundless bullshit, anti-civil rights, pro-racist, etc. crap that they put out. But the degree to which the Democratic Party has been seen as dominated by lawyers and professional managerial class spokespeople, and therefore you pin on the Democratic Party, it's a party of elitists. Right here in front of us are this pool of people who work, who communicate, who can speak at public events, who are the strongest rejoinders to that claim and that just appearance. And they are the union leaders who will invariably come out of rank and file. They're the type of working people that the Democratic Party hasn't put forward enough. And this very effective propagandistic instrument of the Republican Party to claim to be the party of the working class when their policies don't support it. Here are these people. So exactly what Tina and Paul are saying. I loved the idea of inviting, always making sure you invite a union rep to every rally you do, every event you do. Great idea.
Oh, my husband's yelling at me to also make sure that I say that our labor council also does rallies. So watch for those.
Right. Right. And at the very top of the show, I talked about the 55th anniversary commemoration of the Chicano moratorium here in Los Angeles, organized by local labor, that I went to yesterday. It's a beautiful event. Well, you know, guys, I gotta wrap it. Why don't we just hear last thoughts from Tina and Paul, and then we'll go to the stack, and it can be general until I start family time. And actually, Mike Fox, you know, I probably want to duck out of this at about 10 minutes before the hour because my daughter wants me to pick up something at a bakery that closes at 3, about 5 minutes from here. So I'm going to leave a little early today.
And me too. So cool. Let's make it happen.
Okay. Well, final thoughts on just the Labor Day weekend, and let's go Tina, then Paul.
So yeah, I know things seem kind of hopeless right now, and I struggle with that myself, and I've decided to quit not saying it and figure out how to say it in a helpful way. So whenever I get to this point, and I remember during the Bush years, how down that I got then. And what I do then is I go to ground, which means I go to my closer people. And if you look around, you might find that some of your closer people are labor, because there's nobody that cares more about your local community than your local union members. Even when they do things that make you mad, and even when they do things that seem stupid, they're a lot like family. Like, they're here with us. And so, you know, you just have to like get with them and, you know, work through the stuff with them, just like you do with your liberal family members that are not quite as left as you. So that's what I just really encourage you to do, is like go to ground and find your people. And some of them are going to be in labor.
Thank you so much, Tina Shannon. And looking forward to working together going forward, and have a great Labor Day tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And if I may, Sister Tina did it again. So I have this written here because I use it in all of my organizing, all of my onboarding for new members. Every union member represents a family to us. That's the case. They are our neighbors. They literally are our neighbors, right? They're the ones who you turn on the faucet, you turn on the electricity, those are our people. Those are our neighbors there. And I love what she said about family.
You mean like Rob, my neighbor from Yahtzee? Right there, right over there, right through that window.
Right guy. And so that's it. They are family, and it's about relationships. These are organizers on this call. That's who we all are. Go make those relationships. And we can disagree about a data center, right? The construction council, we got to build this data center. And then those of us who protect the air, the water, and the land in the neighborhoods, yes, we're going to have some differences, but in the end, we're in exquisite alignment. The labor movement writ large, right where you live and writ large, is in exquisite alignment with progressive Democrats of America. That's not an exaggeration. That's not hyperbole. We're in alignment. So for God's sakes, do what Sister Tina said. Go get those folks and make them part of your network, because they'll be so glad. They're trained. We pay dues to do our work. We do all of our training. And if we're going to shut down an employer in a strike, for example, I want my union family with me and my community. And then we bond like this. So that's that. Thank you. It's a blessing that you let us be on this. And Tina Shannon, I'm so grateful that you were with us, honestly. Thank you.
Thank you to both Paul and Tina. And with that, let's just move over to the stack. And we'll go John Seeley, Melissa Richardson, Mark Harrison, Bonnie Pomfret. So John Seeley, you're up. Thank you, Paul Stapleton Smith and Tina Shannon. John, what's on your mind?
Well, I just wanted to say in regards to the Gaza issue that, as you know, Alan, because I've been consulting you, it's important to hone in on certain Congress people who are have been retrograde and backward or silent out of fear or whatever reasons on the Gaza issue. And I just wanted to suggest that something I've had some success with over the last week is reaching out to people of faith, clergy, and we should be aware that both the Pope and the leaders of the Episcopal Church in England and in America, the leaders of the Methodist Church and others have been very clear and using quite strong language about barbarities. And I think, people might try to reach out to both to progressive rabbis, who you can find by looking at say the Rabbis for Ceasefire website, and to Catholics, to Episcopalians, Methodists, and others, and any Muslims, to try and get a interfaith delegation to talk to your congresspeople, to demand a meeting with your congresswoman or man, and have a confrontation where along with secular progressives like ourselves, we can speak for the conscience of the community and put them on the spot.
John, thank you. And what John said at the top of his comment is correct. John and I are working together along these lines, and I look forward to continuing that, John, of course, as we come out of this holiday weekend, and we'll be able to let people know on this call how that's going. It's a great initiative that John reached out to me about, and I'm very excited to work with him on it, pertaining specifically to congresspeople here in Southern California, where we both live. Melissa Richardson, you're up. Please unmute, and then Mark Harrison next, then Bonnie.
Okay, I'm already unmuted. Thanks for having me.
Oh, sure.
Anyway, I apologize for being late. I'm signed up to volunteer, and I have a few concerns. I know I'm limited time, so I'll be quick. First of all, they've stopped UNICEF. For somebody that was selling Bibles, that was a shock to me. They never follow their own rules. And I was just trying to re-register as a Democrat, and I figured out you can't register online because I'm basically an independent right now. So I've been struggling with that.
Maybe, wow, if I remember, I'll try to ask Dan about that. You're in Arizona, right?
Yeah, I would like to get away from here because I can't take the heat anymore. But no luck.
We'll hang in there in solidarity on this Labor Day weekend, and keep us updated if there's ways that our team can help you out. Let us know, okay?
Is Dan O'Neill on the call?
Oh, I'm not sure. He usually is, but this is again a holiday weekend, and he doesn't seem to be this weekend now.
His family's in town.
Yeah, I was going to say Dan's not here today.
I was trying to do it myself while I was listening to you guys, and I ran into a few snafus, but I'm registered as an independent.
Oh, wow.
At least I'm still on the voter rolls.
Well, it might be easier if you reach out to us again, maybe on Tuesday and Wednesday. Sometimes it can be tough to, maybe the kind of interface you have would require a follow-up phone call. That might be easier once the work week starts too. But reach out to us about that, and hopefully we can help you out there pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Melissa. Over to Mark Harrison. Please unmute, Mark.
Okay. Hey, everyone. I just want to say we just had a victory in Kentucky, right? Didn't the UAW just win a contract in Kentucky? Shouldn't we be celebrating that? That was a great deal. I saw it online. I just wanted you all to know about that. And in Washington, we already had our first labor celebration. And one of the things I noticed about the demonstration is how multiracial labor is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
That sounds very good. But I have a concern about organized labor on Gaza. It was very involved for a while, UAW and so forth. And now they've kind of disappeared. I want to ask Paul, what happened to Paul and Tina? What happened to that? And then I wanted to say very quickly that there is a labor union activist who is Jewish. Her name is Karen Ackerman. She retired from AFL-CIO. We should be reaching more out to her, and as opposed to people always complaining about Weingarten and AFT. I'm done.
Yeah. Paul, I don't know if you want to respond to that. If Paul's still with us. Sorry, I'm on the. Is Paul with us and still a co-host? I mean, my impression was that on Gaza, right off the bat, some of the statements from, right off the bat, in the weeks after October 7th, which of course a lot of institutions had statements that focused on, the attack from Hamas. But then following that, in the months that followed, there were certain statements from organized labor that I felt weren't responsive of what was clearly developing in terms of the slaughter of innocents and civilians in Gaza. But I thought it had started to improve. It goes union by union, of course. Yeah, that's a little dismaying that you think they actually got to a point and then they started reverting back. If they did, it could have likely been related to a lot of unions have struggled with their messaging in light of the Trump administration, which we've seen. And there's been some criticisms of some positions unions have taken in relationship to Trump policies. Those are often nuanced statements, around the tariffs and things like that. Paul, I don't know if Paul has any thoughts on what you said.
No, just briefly on AFL-CIO, on their website, there's a great blog. There's statements on Gaza. Of course, as soon as anything globally affects workers, right? I mean, it qualifies as a worker issue. Any piece of legislation, Medicare for all, immigrants' rights, civil rights, public schools. And so that's a qualifier there. Having said that, Tina Shannon said it earlier, this is a big family. We have Republicans, we have independents, we have Democrats, right? We're nonpartisan in that regard. What it goes to is the agenda and the action and behavior. The AFL-CIO and the other unions don't countenance what's going on there. The question is, what do they do about it as we're pushing bills through Congress, right? As we are fighting the actions that we're fighting. We don't have limitless capacity, but it goes to what Tina said before. Make a relationship, form a relationship. I have so many experts on Palestine. I've done rallies and teach-ins and sort of thing, history, the rabbis that our brother mentioned earlier. So educating our family members, which is union too. Trust me, it's a huge deal at my union. The question is, what do we do publicly? And then also, what do we do quietly behind the scenes with, in our case, Senators Ruben Gallego and Mark Kelly? Trust me, we are putting huge pressure on them. We have our back channels. PDA does too. So what we do publicly, if you will, publicly in the media is one thing, but you can have those conversations with those labor leaders and say, man, we've got to do something. We've got to represent our collective interest in that regard. I hope that, and that doesn't mean to be weaselly. I don't mean that to be weaselly, but you know how we work. We have federal teams, state teams, local municipal teams. And so we do our quiet stuff behind, we do that. And having said that, I hope that satisfies our brother's question, because can we be everywhere on every single issue all the time with 100% of our resources? The answer is no. We have limited resources, but we live in the community. And so it's that relationships. And if you want us to sign on to something, if you want to do the rallies, trust me, the people showing up at our Gaza rallies now are labor. We have labor there all the time. And so I hope that's useful to answer that question. It's a little more complicated than it might otherwise appear.
And Tina, please. Yeah, go ahead, Tina.
Step it down to a more grassroots level. So our local peace group, we have overlap. We have union folks, we have in the peace group, we have peace people who are friendly with union. So our peace group, of course, is focusing on Gaza. So one of our union work throughout the state, that the president of a neighboring county's, actually a neighboring 2-county labor council, is a instructor at a college who was like a pretty much an active Gaza activist, and so she came and gave a really good educational, where we had like maybe 30 people at, about civil rights, freedom of speech on campuses, and Gaza. And, you know, we had people there that had never come to any of our other peace stuff because it was a union speaker. So, and you know, there are some things that are different about unions, but unions are still organizations, and they have leadership, and leadership almost always follows grassroots. It's usually not, it's unusual when it's the opposite, when it's a leader stepping out first. So, you know, you got to build it under them, and then they'll have to see that it's there.
So folks, Bonnie's next. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Paul. Again, thank you, Tina, and thank you, Paul, and thank you to Allison Minnerly. Bonnie is up next. I'm going to ask her to unmute. And Mike Fox, do you want me to wrap up? Because I got to run out. I got 7 minutes to get to a store.
Yep, and I got 10. So yeah, let's put a bow on this, and let's get to work.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Bonnie's up next for family time. We're going to start. And so get ready to speak, but we are going to wrap the recording here. Thank you for joining our PDA Town Hall. We'll be back next week with another PDA Town Hall. I know we're going to be focusing on the Rural New Deal and the work that PDA does in coordination with Rural Urban Bridge Institute. And I know that Tina and I spoke about that earlier, so that'll be great with Anthony Floccavento. And actually, we're hoping to get another congressperson on as well. So it should be a fantastic town hall next week. Join us then. Thank you to Allison Minnerly, Tina Shannon, Paul Stapleton Smith, Donna Smith, Mike Fox, Jim Langford, and all of you. And we'll be back again next week with another PDA Town Hall. Bye for now.
It's an honor to speak. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you. Honored.